Welcome to the Holistic Pathway Podcast, unscripted conversations on mind, body, spirit, and entrepreneurship, a new video series podcast where we dive deep into the holistic integration of life and business. I am Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change pain into possibilities and possibilities into purpose. Today's chat is with Anne Aleckson, and Anne sees, hears, and feels what others don't. She isn't just a mystic, she is a voyager into the future. With a relentless focus on inner peace and a vision for world peace, she leads the charge in consciousness evolution, revolutionizing the way we actualize Unio Mystica, becoming one with all that is. I hope you enjoyed today's chat and stay tuned. We'll see you soon. Well, Anne, it's so lovely to meet you and have you on the podcast. I'm so excited. We were talking just briefly before we started. We are actually in 2 different days right now, right? I'm Thursday afternoon and you're coming from Australia and it's Friday morning for you?
Just after 8 o'clock on Friday morning. Yes. And let me tell you, today is a fabulous day. So get ready to enjoy it.
Excellent. When I get to Friday, excellent. I love that. Well, we just talked briefly before we started about, just like what kind of the internet has done for us to bring us together, especially for those of us who are introverts.
That would be me. Yes, absolutely. And I made the point that I never complain about my Zoom going down or my social media being a problem or the changes that are happening in all of those areas that so many people get a little bit cross about.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't want to say my whole life is online, but the majority of it is. I'm a bit of an introvert.
Yeah.
I'd rather do things with my clients online. It works better for me because I'm in my own energy, which is so important to me. Working energetically with my clients and with my people, without needing to be in the same space as them necessarily. So, and with what happened in COVID, of course, I'd already been working in that way, so it didn't make a lot of difference to me. But everything improved though, right?
Yeah.
The way to do this has improved so much since those days. But yeah, no, it allows me to be energetically very, very clean, which is the way that I like it, because for the work that I do, I need my energy to be very, very clean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just love the internet. And the fact that you're on Thursday and I'm on Friday and we can have this conversation.
I know.
You're not, you're getting closer to going to sleep Thursday night. I've just woken up from Thursday night and Friday morning. It's just extraordinary. I mean,
It really is. It
can you
really is. And to think it's really not been that long that we've had this, right? It's so weird because sometimes I will say, that day that we didn't have the internet and then the next day we did, it's like so weird to think about that time. And even cell phones, I've had the same number on my cell phone since I got a cell phone, and my mom, my daughter, my son, we all have the same numbers, but nobody else does. Like everybody has had many numbers, we have the same.
I was marveling the other day at the fact that I've still got the same number that I've had since not the very first number that I got, but certainly the second or third number. And I've had it for so long and I can't even, I mean, can you imagine our grandparents or even our parents seeing what happens in this tiny little thing?
Well, my mom, she has a phone, and I don't know how she ever didn't have a phone because it seems to be permanently attached to her head. But, this is so funny because I'm also introverted. And a lot of times people think because I do these different things that I'm extroverted, but I'm really not. I need to reclaim my energy by myself. And I used to have an in-person office. Actually, I've had several. And when I would have those spaces, I would get there an hour or two before the clients so that I could just completely transform the energy in the room and of myself, and really have it so that they felt a distinct difference from being outside to walking in through the door. And being online is kind of nice because, like, for this podcast, it's been so important to me to make positive global impact. Well, I would have been able to do that before. And now I'm so blessed to have people coming on as guests that I would have probably never met before. And now we're coming together as if we're in the same room. And I like to envision us out having lunch somewhere, just chatting. So that's amazing. It's amazing. So you talked about using the internet and Zoom and like this kind of thing in your work. Have you always done this kind of work, or did something transpire in your life to kind of move you toward this work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Of course, there's always a awakening moment, isn't there, in these sorts of stories?
Yeah.
And indeed, I was in a unhappy marriage. I was working my backside in a job that was really hard,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally as well. And I felt like my soul was dying. I truly
Mhm.
did. There were times when I drove home from work and cried over my steering wheel
Yeah.
just because of, I was starting to awaken. But I had that moment of awakening. It was very powerful for me, the moment of awakening. Prior to that, I'd not really had anything to do with anything in the spiritual kind of world. I mean, the most I'd ever done was had my palm read at a Sunday market. So I was aware of it, but it had never been part of my life. And I had a moment of awakening during meditation. I was seeking happiness, right?
Yeah.
I felt like my life was just not what I wanted it to be, and I didn't know how to fix it. And for some reason, I decided that I was going to find happiness. I was going to learn about happiness. So I started reading books and these sorts of things. And one of the things that every single person I talked to about happiness, the every book that I read, every guru that I sought out about happiness, every psychologist, there was a lot of books at the time that were being written about how to be happy and the
Hmm.
psychology of happiness and positive psychology and these sorts of things. That was all trending at the time. And there was a commonality in all of them. In fact, I even went to see the Dalai Lama at the happiness conference in Sydney here, a long, long time ago, and he said it as well. They all said the same thing: meditate. So I started to meditate in my own fashion because I'm not a patient person. I'm
Yeah.
not a person who can sit and quieten my thoughts, and these I can now, of course, but back then. So I found my own way to do it, and as I did it, I started to hear a voice inside me speaking to me. It was kind of inside me, but it was also outside of me. It was very strange, very,
Yeah.
very strange to me. And it said the same thing every single time. And then I came across Wayne Dyer, and in one
Hmm.
of his books, he talked about Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
So I looked at that. In fact, I bought their book and I carried it around for 6 months before reading it. I just couldn't ever bring myself to read it. I
Did,
took it to Vegas
was
one
it
year.
was it Ask and It Shall Be Given? Was that the one?
Asking it is given. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And I even flew from Australia to Vegas, 14 plus hours, and back with the book, thinking I'd read it on the plane, and I never did. And then the week after I got back, I got very, very sick. And I was in bed for probably a week. I had a small child at the time. My mother was looking after him. And I found myself reading the book and crying a lot, literally within reading just the part that Jerry Hicks, where he's introducing it. I started bawling, and I'm thinking, what is going on? And then I learned to recognize that what was happening to me, the voice that I was hearing, and what they were saying to me, what that voice was saying to me, was very similar to the experience that Esther was having. And then I started to learn a bit more about it. I found some people who were familiar with channeling. They held space for me so that I could, because I knew that it wanted to use me to speak, right? And that's a scary, scary thing.
Yeah.
Very hard to open up your throat chakra, particularly for me, a female who had always been quiet. I mean, growing up, I was constantly told, in that smart ass teenage way, "Oh, stop talking so much, and you talk so much," because I never spoke at all.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly terrifying for me, as well as I was thinking I was going mad.
Mhm.
But I found people who held space for me, and eventually I was able to let the words come out, and that started my new life, my new way of being, my new adventure. And it's been very exciting. I've had the last couple of years mostly not doing it because I've had some deaths in the family, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to do it for a while. But I'm literally coming right back right now. It's all
That's
happened.
that's so and when did this when do you feel like was your awakening? When do you feel like that happened for you?
Well, I mean, that's the initial awakening was very slow, with just me meditating and hearing that voice saying the same thing over and over and over again. The moment that I did allow it to speak through me, that was an incredible moment of awakening, where I had the whole rest of the day, I had all sorts of experiences that were just so ridiculously ridiculous. Like,
Mm.
literally sitting in the office not long after I had allowed that to come through. And of course, I had a very, very visceral experience when it happened. I had like goosebumps running up and down my body. I felt like I was going to vomit. I felt like my head was lifting off. And then I put my hand on the wall, and my hand went right through the wall.
Mm.
Right. And then I went out on my deck and I heard a tree speaking to me.
Mhm.
And these sorts of experiences I had for a few hours that afternoon, and it was like mind blown. And it's, I've never been the same since.
Yeah, so when did that happen for you? What year was that? Do you know?
Yeah, so it was approximately 14 years ago. I don't even know what that is because I don't retain things
Yeah.
anymore like that. You know what I mean? So it was 20, no, it wasn't. It was before that. It was 2008 to, I
Okay.
don't even know what year we're in.
It's 2024.
2014. No, why did I say 2014? I was thinking literally right now we're in 2014, but we're in
Mhm.
2024, so that's 10 years ago, and then another 5 years. So yeah, just before the 20s.
Well, you may have been picking up on mine because my awakening was in 2014.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing is like I always refer to it as my awakening in 2014, but truthfully, there were
Yeah.
other awakenings before that, but I didn't know what was happening. I didn't recognize it, and the big one, as I call it, happened in 2014, and my gifts are different than yours, and that's part of why I love to bring people together so that people who are watching, who knows, they may be going through awakening right now, and they may be not understanding what's happening, and one of us may say something that helps them sort of put their pieces together. Like mine started really with me learning about the mind body connection, because my physical health really began to tank in 2002. And I have a severe history of trauma and abuse and loss. And so I started learning a little bit about what that meant. And then I had some near death things that happened. And then around 2010, I was definitely moments away from death with an emergency that happened in 2011. 2011, I started meditating. 2014, after a major move, things just got weird. And I often say that it's like all of a sudden it felt like birds were speaking directly to me or coming out of the trees, and all of a sudden colors look
Those were
different.
brighter.
And everything. And I started seeing a red thread through my mind that started putting all these pictures
Oh,
that I'd gone through together. I used to tell people it feels like my life is like the game, The Legend of Zelda. Like I have no idea what's going on. And I would go up to a door and say, hello, do you have pieces to my puzzle? And they would say no. And I would say, thank you. And go to the next one. And it was so bizarre. And it's one of those things that for me, I think you talked about looking for happiness. I had been probably inner peace was the thing that I looked for. And I constantly felt like I know I have to be here for something more than this. There has to be more to my life than this. Like, I can't have gone through all the things I've gone through and it not mean something more, you know?
yes, I do know, and I so agree with you. I mean, and that usually is where an awakening begins. I actually went through the search for my purpose after I had my awakening, very soon after, because it was wonderful doing this thing and being able to sit in a room full of people and channel and tell them things that they didn't know that I should know and blah, 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 all of that stuff. But I just kept feeling that there was something bigger. Like,
Mhm.
how much bigger, really? I mean, what do I want, right? But I just kept feeling that there was something bigger. So I'd literally go to bed at night and beg the universe or whatever was happening with me, that whatever that was going on, because I didn't understand it in the way that I do now. Um, Tell me what my purpose is. What am I here to do? What am I here to do? And then because I had an experience one morning in my meditation after I'd gone to bed that night, again begging to know what I was here to do. There's something I'm here to do. I know it. Tell me what it is. Tell me what it is. Help me find it. Help me find it. And I had an experience in meditation where I'd started working more with the energy that was speaking through me on a personal level, and they took me into the future and showed me the world in peace. And I came back from that experience with what I call my purpose statement: world peace through inner peace, one person at a time, and it starts with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first job, my personal purpose, was to find inner peace. And then my second purpose was to help other people to find inner peace, my life purpose. And my soul's purpose is world peace, right? So all of this lifetime is leading to my soul moving closer towards our soul, moving closer towards world peace. I've seen it, it's inevitable. So it allows me to feel more peace, to have more peace in whatever's going on in the world today.
I love that so much. And the messages that I received in mine were different than yours, but yet I have heard almost the same words that you just said come out of my own mouth. When I first received my awakening, the words that I heard was, Tammy Coyne, you are here to be an internationally known author, speaker, master teacher, and healer. You are here to empower, motivate, inspire, and transform the lives of others using the stories of your life. And I said, what? Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know how, I don't even know what that means. And I had said in that moment, I'm a girl from Oklahoma. I don't know anyone internationally. Like, what does this even mean? Which is so funny now that especially we're here and I'm in Arizona and you're in Australia. And that's so funny to me. But I, so it's like I had this thing given to me, but I didn't know exactly what it meant and I didn't exactly know how to do it. And then about a year later, I got another message because divine timing, right? The year is really this fast. But for me, it was a year. And I got that I was here to be a lighthouse for the lighthouses. And so I was like, okay, well, I think I get that, but yet still not really
What does
sure.
that
What does
mean?
that mean? So I am curious. One of the things you said in the very beginning that you were looking for happiness and that you saw kind of a thread there's the thread again. Saw a thread sort of running through all of these things. What was it that you noticed that was kind of the general theme when you were looking for happiness that you saw in all of these different things? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, if I had to encapsulate it, I would say happiness is found within.
Okay, excellent. Yes. Yeah.
Um, and it's inner work that has to be done for you to be happy with who you are, with what's happening in the world, with it's all got to do with you. And of course, at the time, I don't, it's been a long time since I've been doing this work. And it was very clear to me that the thing for me to do was to first become the frequency of inner peace and then share it with others. And I felt like I went through almost a decade-long apprenticeship with Source, with all that is.
Mhm.
And it was my job to embody the teachings that they
Yeah,
were bringing through.
right.
And so I spent time doing that. And so my understanding today is so different than what it was back then. And more than my understanding, my whole world is different than it was back then. My whole understanding of spirituality, as I said, I had never been involved in the spiritual world.
Right.
So I did what I thought you should do. I went out and I found people who were psychics and mediums and healers and spiritual people who'd been doing it for years, and they all told me I was doing everything wrong. So that moved me into a period of time where I stopped doing what I was here to do
Yeah.
because I went into so much self-doubt. Literally, and the blessings and the curse of social media. When I first started, the internet was just, when I started doing it for clients, the internet was just coming online, and we were brand new to Facebook, 2009, I think it was, 2008, 2009. And I posted about what I do. And I got two women who I'd never spoken to in my life send me messages on Facebook to tell me I was not allowed to promote what I was doing, and I was not allowed to charge for it. And so that was a really interesting experience. And then I hired a coach who told me that as a coach, I should not channel for people. I should not tell anybody that I was doing that. It was a hidden behind the scene. And for me, when it all happened to me, it was very clear to me that I was just to dive into this and start doing it, tell everybody what I was doing, and not have any fear about it. And they put the fear of God into me
Yeah.
about what I was doing. So for a long time, I thought everyone else knew how to do it better than me. So I was always trying to figure out how to do it the right way. And then, at the time, I was still doing it my way all the time, but just pretending I was doing it everyone else's way. But, they would tell me, I'd been taught by all that is to never close my crown chakra. To always, that's actually how we change the world, is to be the open heart that we are,
Mhm.
to not close it down. You close it down is when you get hurt, right? But every room I was in, I'd go to psychic events thinking, yeah, I'm going to do card readings, or I'm going to do readings for people or whatever. And these people that I'd never met would come up to me and say, you need to close your crown chakra. And these sorts of things. So it was really, really interesting. And, protect yourself and da-da-da. Whereas I'd been taught that that was all nonsense,
Mhm.
right? So it was nonsense for me because I didn't need to believe in it. Yes, there are people who believe in it and it works for them, and that's all good, but that wasn't me. And they
Yeah.
were trying to put me into that category. And I allowed myself to be put into that category and slow myself down, slow my work down, all sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, it's been a wild journey.
Well, it sure has. And my journey was different, has been different than yours, but there are also some similarities. Like I had no idea how to be an entrepreneur. Like I was I was an analyst, I was a supervisor in the federal government. I didn't know any of this. And so I'm online looking for guidance, looking for people to help me, and there were coaches. I didn't even know what a coach was at that point. And they essentially were telling me that my words were wrong, that I wasn't doing it right. And the thing is I started getting farther and farther away from what my people needed. And now 10 years later, it became such a jumbled up mess. Nobody even knew what I was saying anymore.
Yeah.
And then you've got the flip side of that to where, um, I was very vulnerable and thinking, oh, people are here to help me. Well, it wasn't necessarily that way. And then I have other people who literally think that the work is of the devil.
Yes, of course.
I have heard this nonsense. And finally, I said, I have literally been given a mission to do good in the world, and I have dedicated my life to this. If that is what you think, then apparently we did not get the same memo. And what I do know is what you think about me really isn't important because I was called to do something else. And if you don't understand it, that's really not my
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah.
And so it is very frustrating, and I think it's important because especially people, if they don't really understand past lives and they don't understand what we may have offered in past lives that may have gotten us killed or whatever, then people are very afraid. They don't know what's happening. They're in the society we live in, you start talking about certain things, people think you're losing your mind, think you need to be locked up somewhere. And it's just, it can be really challenging for people when they're just beginning this journey and feeling like they are so alone in this world. And part of the reason why it to me that I was called into this phase of what I'm doing now with the podcast is so that they see I've got women on here, I've got men on here, I've got people of color on here, I've got people in different parts of the world on here. So you're not crazy. You're just surrounded by people who who don't understand what's happening with you. And to be able to let people see that there are people out here who actually do care, who can help you. And also I've done videos basically warning, there's one that I've done like betrayal on the path. Well, there's a lot of well-meaning people out there who sometimes aren't out there to do you good. They're out there to do you harm. And I think it's super important for people to know within themselves how to discern and make those choices for themselves so they don't get thrown off track for years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so important. So, so important. And one of the things throughout my decade and a half in this work has always been to just not be afraid to talk about what I'm doing, because what I discovered, like, I thought I was the only one, and then I found other people, and so I made the decision that I was always going to talk about. I mean, I've been on Facebook for since 2008, telling people that I do this,
Yeah.
right? Back when nobody was talking about it, when it wasn't that I mean, it's still not at the level that it's going to be, but
It's a
we're
little more
slowly
it's
getting
a little
there.
more mainstream now than it once was.
Exactly. Exactly, and thank you to COVID for that. I mean, who thought we'd ever say that, right? But you particularly in the US had a huge collective awakening because of COVID,
Mhm.
because you had nothing else to do and you all started meditating and doing yoga and things like that. It was very, very easy to see from here in Australia the change in conversation with American people
Uh-huh.
that occurred when that was happening. It was like, yes, finally, they're all catching up. And the amount of people that I've watched wake up since then and come into this field, it's phenomenal to me.
Yes.
And with a lot more confidence, because there are people like us already sitting here talking
Yeah.
about it. So there's none of that, oh God, this weird thing happened to me and I think I'm going crazy. I used to get a lot of people come to me, or they would send their own coaching clients to me saying she had this experience and she's really scared, she thinks she's going mad. And I'd be like, yeah, just send her along.
Well, and you're so right. And it's still that way here, not as much as it was even in the, prior to that time. I would say 2014 to 2018, 19, that was still quite a bit, and people, usually what someone would say when they would come to me is, you're going to think I'm crazy. And that's how
Exactly.
they'd start every time. And I would say, I promise you, I'm not going to think you're crazy, and a lot of times I found when people would come to me, most of like the first session together, I would talk to them because they would still not be sure if I was someone they could talk to. And so I would just
Yeah.
talk, and then all of a sudden they would go, stop, wait, let's talk more about that.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite sayings is, look, I'm the weirdest one in the room. Don't worry about it. There's nothing you can tell me that's going to be weirder than what I've experienced.
I
And
love
yeah, it's it's been such fun and such a journey, and such a joy to watch others awakening and sharing their work in the world instead of hiding it. Because
yeah,
I wanted to hide it, and I've tried very hard never to hide it, and been pushed back constantly, pushed back. You can't tell people that you channel. You can't, because at the time that I started to allow this to come through, because of all the research I'd done on happiness, I had left the work that I'd been doing, which by the way was in the accounting field, in
hmm
the property management field, in the mining field, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, so completely left brain. And so I left that and became a happiness coach. Ah, I had a business called Step Up to Joy. And it was through a coaching call when the voice started to come through more strongly, and I started to channel during those sorts of sessions and things. But the pushback from everyone around me, I mean, I worked with a very early on, I gave a session to a woman who had been a mentor to me, a huge speaking person in Australia here. She's now relocated to the UK. I did a session with her and she got such great results from it in business wise. I mean, on the day that I did a session with her, she sat and she wrote a coaching program, which is a multi-million-dollar earner for her to this day.
amazing.
And I asked her one day if she would do a reference for me, a testimonial.
Yeah.
And I can't let people know that I've had this sort of experience, and that happened a lot in the early days.
Well, my work is deep emotional work a lot of times for people who are moving, and I'm getting ready to move more toward working with entrepreneurs who are already moved into their work, because a lot of the people that I've been working with, I know where they're headed, but they don't know where they're headed.
Yeah.
And so they would have a lot of trouble, maybe giving their name or giving a testimonial, kind of similar thing, because it's, they still think that what I do is counseling, and I have a master's degree in counseling, but I am actually a spiritual coach is what I am, so it really does get very confusing. And I'm not someone like you have the gift of channeling. As of now, I'm not someone who channels. I'm not someone who does, but I'm claircognizant and I'm clairsentient. And so information comes to me in different ways. But interestingly enough, I have, and I haven't shared this with a lot of people, but there have been times when I'm driving down the road in different places, and a Native American man began singing out of my mouth. And And I know that there are many, many connections I have to this, and it's brought me a great deal of insight to some other lives that I've had, some other different things. So it's very interesting. And I bring that up simply because every person is so unique with what their gifts are, with how it's going to show up for them. And it may not look like anyone else you've ever seen, the way that things come to you, or and yes, and so it's so important to be able to find mentors or coaches or teachers or guides on the path that actually help you rather than shut you
In a
down. Yeah,
box.
yeah.
This is how you're supposed to be. Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I so agree with you. And yeah, you know, I call myself a channel, but I mean, you know, when I'm working with a client, sometimes I will have a relative come through. Sometimes I will have staff families come through. Sometimes I will have it's I'll have to tell you about the weirdest experience I had, the scariest experience. But what happens when I channel is that I just empty myself out
Hmm.
and allow what needs to come through for the person who's in front of me to come through. And that will show up however it shows up, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so in the moment of awakening that I had where they first spoke through me, all my clairs just blew out completely, all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm able to just allow whatever needs to come through in whatever way. So, and I've always been again, one of the things that they all tell you not to do, right? I've always It's not me who creates the experience, it's the person that I'm with,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And coaches used to say to me, "You can't tell them that. Why would they pay you if that's the truth?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's the truth, right?"
They have their answers. What
It's true
we
for
do
me.
is help them connect to
Exactly.
the answers.
Exactly. But I mean, but you know, I've always been very upfront about whatever happens, happens. There's no, I had a client who was going through a cancer journey, and when I did like 3 intense weeks working with her right at the end, and she used to tell me that when she'd be in the garden gardening after sessions, that she would be joined by all these angels. Um, and I've had people tell me that I've been in their lounge room in the middle of the afternoon when they just walking around doing that. I'm like, yeah, no, I wasn't. I'm not going to go into anyone's house as an introvert. Um, but that's the thing, right? It's so important that people understand that the way I do it is never going to be the way anybody else does it. And
Uh-huh.
I'm never going to do it the way that anybody else does it. We all are unique, and we all have, I mean, there's billions of people in the world. We all have a portion of those people who have come to work with us through the way that we do it, and we don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing or how they're doing it. We
No.
just have to be willing to, and I'm going to use that word that I really don't like using because it's taken on such a meaning that isn't real. We just have to be our authentic self, right?
Which
Now, you
my
know,
my signature program is literally called Unboxing Your Authentic Self.
yeah.
Yes,
But
because
authentic,
most
the
people don't know what that means. They don't even know how to do that.
But this is the thing, right? The word authenticity and the expression of being authentic has been so bastardized in
Yes.
the mainstream coaching industry.
Yep.
It doesn't have that meaning anymore. So even when you say it, like I'm literally saying, just be who you are. If you channel, if you do light language, if you whatever you are, be it.
Be it.
Trying to be, not try to be it, but just be it,
Yeah.
right? And that's the authenticity that is really being called for. But because
Absolutely.
we've made it into this thing, you know, decide who you're going to be and then be it, and that's authentic. No, it's not. It's not about deciding who you're going to be. It's about being who you are.
That's exactly it. And part of when I get into deep conversations with someone, I tell them one of the things that happened was someone said to me, Tammy, just be you. And I didn't know what that meant.
What does that mean?
I didn't know how to do that. And so that's when I started really looking at the journey that I had been on and what actually helped me evolve into my actual authentic voice, who I actually am, and how to recognize what that even means. And I don't know if you would be interested in speaking about this or not, but I know one of the things to me that's important for people to know is that some of this work can feel very dark because there is shadow work that needs to be done. And it can feel, yes, it can feel very dark. And I also do think there are dark energies, and it's important for people to understand when something is dark, as in out to harm you, versus when something feels dark, like shadow work,
Yes, yes.
and it can
Yeah.
be, and that's why I think it's so important for people to become empowered in a way that they know for themselves how to discern, how to distinguish what those feelings are.
I love that. And I so agree with you. And it brings me back to the experience I wanted to tell you about,
Yeah.
which I'll tell you about in a moment. But first and foremost, I want to say that shadow work, I mean, whether you call it shadow work, inner work, I call it inner work. I also call it trauma work, but not in the way that most people talk about trauma. For me, trauma is subjective. So it can be a tiny little thing or it can be a really big thing. It all causes the same thing to happen in your energy field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, part of the 10 years that I spent in this apprenticeship with spirit was spent very much doing my inner work, releasing the traumas because I had childhood sexual abuse, and all the rest of it. Right? I mean, I'd lived a long life at that point already, and so I'd accumulated all of these little traumas and big traumas, and just been holding on to them, and that was what was bringing me into the life that I was living. So I absolutely agree with you. I think the very first thing to do, and I say this to everyone, we talk about raise your vibration. The quickest, easiest way to raise your vibration is to do your inner work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yes, you can band-aid it and go dancing around the house in the middle of the day to really lift your spirits. They're all good things as well. But if you first do the inner work and release that darkness from inside you so you can become the light that you are here to be,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to go and dance around the house. You just do it
100%.
spontaneously because you feel so damn good,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then secondary to that, I want to share this story.
Yes, please.
I love this story. You see, there's a race of alien beings that a lot of people have kind of put into a place of being the bad ones, the bad race, right?
The reptilians,
Yeah,
with them.
exactly. I never know what to call them. I was just about to say lizard people, but then you said reptilians. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I don't believe in it. I don't believe in them, and that's just me. It's
Mhm.
always been. I've always understood that that doesn't exist for me, right? And yet, I had a client come to me for a session.
Mhm.
She read an article that I'd written in a magazine, and she kind of went, "Oh, this is the person I need to see." I don't even know what the article was about. It was just general stuff. It wasn't anything deep or anything like that. And she'd been and seen a lot of people, like internationally. She'd actually travelled into your country and many other countries, trying to rid herself of what was going on with her. So anyway, we did a session, and during that session, to my incredible surprise, because I let go of everything that I know to be true and just become one with the client, a reptilian showed up beside me, right?
Mhm.
I don't even believe in them.
Yeah.
It was the most bizarre experience. But there was a barrier between us. There was like those clear plastic shields that they had during COVID. It was like that, right? like it was there and it was talking
Mm-hmm.
to me and speaking to her through me, releasing her from what she'd gone through her entire life, from being a baby, the sexual abuse, she always felt she'd been chained by this race of beings, which
Yeah.
I don't believe in. So for me, going into that session, I was like, right, I'm going to sort her out, you know.
Mhm.
But in fact, what happened was it showed up in front of me because she had such a strong belief in it that she affected my belief. I still don't believe in them, by the way,
Mhm.
but in that moment I did. And in that moment he showed up, and in that moment he released her from what she'd been going through.
Well, interestingly enough, this has been probably about 7 years ago now. I was in, I had an office and I was in another state at that point, and I had someone reach out to me for hypnotherapy. And when we began talking, he began sharing these experiences that he had had and drawings that he had drawn and people that were showing up in this different things. And anyhow, we work together and he still contacts me from time to time because he evolved on his journey, and he is, whether he is from that particular group of people, everything looks to be that way.
Yeah.
I worked with him in the way that I could, and then I actually connected him with a couple of other people that I felt like would be able to better serve him. And he then went on to do speaking engagements and things for them. And so that was one of the things. It's because with my work, it is a no judgment zone. So I don't know who's coming. I don't know what kind of thing they've got going on. And my job is to be able to hold space for them in a way. And if I can assist them, and then perhaps find, the next. I often say I feel a little bit like a concierge, like at a hotel, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yes, you'll need to here, contact so and so, contact so and so, which again is another reason for this podcast, because I'm like, I need to meet some people internationally. And then that way I can kind of get a feel for what they do, who they are. And if I have something comes up where I need to refer someone or someone needs to refer to me, we've actually made
Yeah.
contact with
Yeah.
someone, and it helps to, I like to envision us all being lighthouses who have all connected our lights, not only for the people, but also for each other,
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
think that's important. And yeah, no, I agree with you. Certainly, I'm a stop along the way for many people. And,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that. For a little while, I was like, oh, I want to do more. I want to. But no, I've realized that I'm a catalyst and I'm an activator. And
Hmm.
so, during sessions, people get activated into their own spiritual gifts and things like that. So that's my job. That's what I'm here to do. And that's okay. And if it's only a 1 hour session with me, I'm okay with that. It is what it is, you know?
Well, so true. I'm also a catalyst. I'm a way shower. I'm a lot of these different things. And so for people, and sometimes I have been given so many different abilities through all of my lifetimes, through my experiences. Sometimes people come to me for a time, they may leave, they may come back. And what I really love is when someone reaches out to me, say like 3, 4 years later, and says, you remember how I used to nod my head when you were talking to me and I had absolutely no idea what you were talking about? I get it now. I know now. And I said, well, I said, trying to help you get there,
Yeah. I love
but
that. And
but sometimes,
yep.
it's they've still got to gather more pieces before all the pieces start to come together,
And that's when I got comfortable with the fact that people come and go, right?
Hmm.
Because I would have people reach out to me 5, 6, 7 years later and say, I just realized that everything that's happened in my life was started then. And beautiful, it's just incredible. And what what an incredible creator that person is, to have created the experience that they needed to wake up, or to
Absolutely.
unlock something, or to activate something, or to step into their life.
Well, and you bring up such an important point, and I've talked to people because, again, not all of the people who come to me have awakened yet, but those that have, one of the things that I talk to them about that's so important is people really slip into this egoic place of thinking it's their job to go wake other people up. No, no, it's no, no. In fact, that's never going to work. Like, you've got to just focus
Can't
on
make
what you're doing.
Yeah, you
And
can't. There's that old saying. I mean, I could make up a new saying, but there's that old saying: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
you can't. And the thing about it is I've said to people, there was so many times on my own journey, I wouldn't have been ready for the work that I do now.
Yeah,
You're not ready until you're ready. And then there's the other thing, when the student is ready, the teacher
yeah,
appears. And it's so important for people to understand. I've had clients, one in particular, and if he happens to watch, he'll know that I'm referring to him. And he's one of my favorites. And we've talked over and over again. He was always looking for a way to get to the top of the ladder. And I'm just like, you can't do the shortcut thing. It's not going to work. You need
it's
these
a
other
journey.
pieces so you'll be ready, because what's coming for you, I promise you're not ready for yet, and just slow your roll and do your work.
And I talk about people who would approach me on social media and tell me I was doing it wrong. And what you're saying there reminds me of a moment when I had someone say to me, "You need to not be doing this work. You need to just be doing it for yourself, because when in about 10 years' time you're going to be really successful. But until then, if you're trying to make it the thing that you're doing, you're not going to be successful." And when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that person was right.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had to
and see, and that's
use
that's
my own.
yes, and that's why it's so important to know your own power and to be able to discern, because there are times where people are shutting you down, and there are people who are actually there for you to help you so that you're not face planting, every day,
That's
every
right.
day.
That's exactly right. But it's in the approach, right? A post,
Yes.
a private message on social media to someone you don't know, that's not going to work.
Not going to work at all. And it's so interesting. Have you found on this journey that people sometimes, like, I've had people pop up in instant messenger or whatever and give me a message or ask me a question, and all of a sudden it's activated whatever happened, and we've never spoken before at all, and it's just boom, and it's over, and that was the end. But it was a profound thing, and we came together synchronistically, and then things opened.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
I remember, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, I used to go and do speaking events and things at fairs, and get on stage and do channeling and stuff. And being the introvert that I am, it always concerned me that afterwards I would be inundated with people who would tell me that I was from their star family and that we were sisters, and they'd want to crowd me out, and come and have lunch with me, and then they'd expect friendship, and I'm like, I'm just I'm just not I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be that person for a while, and I tried, but I'm just not. I say to people all the time, I'm not a good friend. I'm not the one who's going to be following you up all the time. I'm not the one who's going to chase you around. If you want to talk to me, give me a call. If you don't, that's okay as well. And they're the friendships that I have, right? There's no um, ownership of the friendship, which
Yeah.
is what it felt like. And I always thought it was really weird, because what I know is that we're the physical manifestation of source, right? Which means that we've lived every life that's ever been lived, which means that, of
Mhm.
course, we know each other from the past.
Yeah.
How can we not? right?
And also, some of the people that we meet, and even people on the spiritual path, I feel like are younger in their journey. And so they're still in the, and some of us are
Well, I,
elders, if that
I,
makes sense on the journey. And it's like,
I
okay, yeah, I
appreciate
don't need that.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I would actually not look at it as younger and older. I would look at it as for me here in Australia, I don't know if it's the same everywhere else, but what I found when I first came into this field is that there were a bunch of people who did spiritual awakening stuff in the 80s, became Reiki healers and stuff, and they think that's the be all and end all. So
Mhm.
they have had their journey and then stopped instead of continuing to grow. And
Yeah,
I found that with other channelers, the well-known channels, that they're not growing further along. They're just kind of stuck where they've always been. And
yeah.
it's a very smart marketing move, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
Uh, and a great way to continue to make money that you made back then, but you're not evolving. You're not evolving. Therefore, you're not showing others what the new reality looks like.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's true. And another thing around that I wanted to bring up that people may encounter on their journey is people who have these abilities or claim to have these abilities, all of a sudden coming to you to let you know, oh, they know what's best for you because they've gotten guidance for your journey. Okay, be very careful of that. You know, a friend of mine has friends on this journey, and they are often convinced that they know better about her path than she does. And it's just, it's
wow.
maddening. And those are some more things that people, it's really, really important that they recognize what they need, and they have the option and the choice to pick the friends that they need and whatever that looks like, and the mentors that they need and whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think, I like to think that I try to give grace to people who are newly awakening,
Yeah,
because I remember that I went through that spiritual ego as well, thinking that I knew
absolutely.
everything. So when I see it now, I kind of try and guide them away from it. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Well, and
It's
that's exactly what I meant about
so
being younger on the
right.
journey, and,
Gotcha. Yeah.
just starting to learn. And they're like, oh, I found more people like
It's
me.
all so exciting and so different, and then you just embed into it. You become it. And so it's still exciting and all of those things, and the colors are still bright, and everything's always, everything's talking to you, all the animals and the insects and the trees and everything talking to you, all of these things, and that's exciting, but it's just a normal way of
It
being.
becomes the norm. Yeah.
When you first start, you still have separation from source, and then you take your journey. Not everyone, but certainly my experience, and sounds like yours as well. As you take your journey, you become more one with source. This is why I use the expression unio mystica,
I love
because
it.
all my work is based on becoming one with source, becoming one with the Akashic field, becoming one with the universe, whatever you want to call it. Becoming one with God is the original meaning of it.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what our evolution is. I believe that's where we're going as human beings. And so my work is just to tell people that, really, not convince them of it, not do anything to make them see it, but just to keep talking about it and saying
Yeah.
it. And this is who we are. This is who we're becoming. Get rid of your shadow, become the light being that you're here to be, Homo luminous, which is the evolution of humanity that we're going through.
Love it. So
Mm.
good. And I cannot believe that we are already at the end of our time. I know I've had such an amazing conversation with you. If you were thinking about anything that you felt was important for people to know, or that's just something that's on your heart, what would that be to kind of take us to the end here?
Well, I always love to end these sorts of conversations where there's people out there listening with something that all that is taught me very early on and said to me you see, first, let me preface it by saying that we are in a crisis of self-love in this world, or a crisis of unself-love in this world. Everything that's going wrong in this world right now is happening because of individual unself-love and collective unself-love. We're effectively walking towards the cliff to suicide our race. And, oh, I'm getting all emotional about that. The thing is this, and this is what Source says all the time, and all that is says to me, you were born perfect and you haven't changed yet.
Love it.
Right?
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And for those of you watching, thank you so much for joining the Holistic Pathway podcast with another amazing conversation. These episodes are uploaded every Saturday around noon Arizona time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.